Oh boy, I'm pretty excited about this one. This is the latest and greatest GPS smartwatch from Polar. This is the Grit X. Hey everybody, welcome back. My name's Dave Dillon from ChaseToSummit.com, and today I've got something pretty exciting. The Polar Grit X is a ruggedly built GPS smartwatch and fitness tracker designed for the outdoors. It has a specific set of features that I think trail and ultra runners will really be interested in. Not only that, but it comes in at a pretty compelling price point. This could be a game changer in the trail running community, and it could be just what Polar needed to pull away some customers from that Garmin, Coros, Suunto ecosystem. Full disclosure, Polar did send me this Grit X out for review. However, this is not a sponsored video and I'm allowed to give you my full unbiased opinion. That said, this is not a full in-depth review. This is merely just a first impressions video. I've only had this Grit X for a couple of days, so I can't really give you all of the details and my full opinion on it just yet. So make sure you subscribe down below so you don't miss that video when it comes out in the future. In this video, I'm just going to be going over the hardware, the specs, the feature set, what makes it kind of unique in the Polar ecosystem, and also show you some data from my first run with it compared to the Garmin Fenix 6 and the Coros Apex Pro. The Polar Grit X comes in 3 colors. This black one like I have here, this gray and army green color like I have here, and also white, which I don't have on hand unfortunately. I'm not big on unboxings, but inside the box you get the Grit X itself, some paperwork, and a charging cradle. The charging cradle is actually pretty nice. It's a little magnetic clip that goes onto the back of the watch. This is actually the same kind of charger that's on the Polar Ignite in the Vantage series. It stays on there quite securely and it's low profile enough where you could actually wear it while you're running if you really needed to charge up in a pinch. The included band on the Polar Grit X is actually pretty nice. It's a silicone strap, but it's actually got this really cool kind of fabric texture on the outside. It's a standard 22mm quick release band, and you can buy these in various colors on Amazon for just a couple of bucks. I'll link some of those down in the description if you want to check those out. The design of the Polar Grit X borrows a lot from its competition in this segment. Around the front, you've got a stainless steel bezel, and that's actually where the band clips into, which is pretty nice. The remainder of the body is actually some sort of polycarbonate plastic around the back, and the lens around the front of the watch is a Gorilla Glass 3. Unfortunately, there is no sapphire option with the Polar Grit X. The Polar Grit X has a standard 5-button layout, however it's kind of the opposite of the other brands. The right hand has a single OK button in the middle, and then the top and bottom on the right is actually an up and down button for navigating through the menus. However, this is a fully touch-enabled display, so you can just swipe around to go through the menus and select things, but it is nice to have buttons in the event that the screen gets wet. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a way to turn off the touch display, which is something I might do if I was really sweaty or I was planning on being wet all the time, because water on the display can make inadvertent touches. The screen itself is 240 by 240 pixel resolution, and it is a full color transflective display. It's quite easy to read in any kind of lighting situation, even in the dark thanks to the backlight. The Polar Grit X is approximately 46mm in diameter and about 14mm thick. This is very similar to like the Garmin Fenix 6 or the Coros Apex Pro. What is nice about the Polar Grit X is it's very lightweight. This comes in at only 64 grams, including the strap. Overall, as far as build quality goes, this thing does feel pretty rugged. I think it'll last a while. The menu system on the Grit X is a lot like what you'll find on the Polar Ignite or the Polar Vantage V. However, there are a few more options on the Grit X that you won't find in the Vantage or the Ignite. The menu on the Grit X is quite intuitive. You can either use the buttons to navigate it or you can swipe around with your fingertip very easily. From the watch face, it will display multiple widgets for your day. And also something new to the Grit X is it actually includes a weather widget this time around, which wasn't on the Polar Ignite. The weather app on the Polar Grit X is actually really nice. It tells you your current weather with precipitation and cloud and all that, but it also gives you a 2-day extended forecast and it's broken down by the hour. What I like about the weather widget is that even when your phone is disconnected or your Bluetooth is off, it will display some weather stats from the last time you synced. This is actually really valuable if you go into the backcountry where you don't have a cell phone signal. As far as sensors go, the Grit X has an altimeter, a compass, and of course GPS. Within GPS, it does support Galileo, QZSS, and GLONASS. So you've got a lot of coverage with different types of satellites. The Polar Grit X also supports pairing external sensors and Plus and Bluetooth are supported. One weird thing though is in the GPS settings of the Grid X, I didn't find a way to turn on GPS only mode. Typically GPS only will save you some battery life. The Polar Grid X can get up to 40 hours of continuous tracking in GPS mode. And that includes wrist-based heart rate sensors turned on, Bluetooth turned on, all of it. And if you need more than 40 hours, you can go into the settings, turn off things, turn down the GPS accuracy, and get up to 100 hours of GPS tracking. I'd say for most people, 40 hours is plenty. On the flip side, in standby mode, the Polar Grid X only gets 7 days of smartwatch use, which I find kind of weird. When you look at the competition, some of them are doing like a month of standby mode, and it seems weird that the Polar Grid X has such great GPS performance with battery life, but when you turn it into just a smartwatch, it only lasts for a few days. However, I'm still pretty happy with that 40 hours of GPS use. It'll track your steps, your sleep, stairs climbed, all of those metrics people want on a daily basis. All of these metrics will sync to the Polar Flow application, which is great. Has a very polished user interface. It's so easy to go through all of your stats. You can export data, you can import data. It syncs with Strava, it syncs with Training Peaks, it syncs with just about every service you want. I really like the Polar Flow ecosystem. It even has a desktop application if you don't want to use your phone to sync with the watch. One of the nicest things about the Polar Flow app is that you can customize all the data pages of your activities right within the app. It makes customizing all of your activities so easy. As far as what activities you can track go, Polar has an extensive list. I'm talking hundreds of activities. You can go figure skating or play badminton or go kayaking or kite surfing, whatever you want. Basically, it's all in there, and if it's not, you can create a custom activity to track it. Another nice feature about the Polar ecosystem is the sleep tracking. They do a really nice job. The sleep tracking data actually rolls into another feature called FitSpark, which will actually make suggestions for workouts given your recovery, your rest, and the activity from your previous day. All right, so let's talk about some of the new features that are unique to the Polar Grid X. Around the back of the watch, we have the new Precision Prime 2.0 heart rate sensor. It looks a lot like the Polar Vantage V and the Polar Ignite heart rate sensor, except that the LEDs are a slightly different color. And from what the people at Polar have told me, this new design is meant to reduce any artifacts from the motion of your wrist while you're running to try to get a better read on your heart rate. Another feature in the Polar Grid X that was previously only in the Vantage V is running power right in the watch itself. This is actually really exciting. Running power is a metric to determine exactly how much effort you're putting out at your feet. So say you're running on soft sand, you're definitely exerting more power than if you were on a hard road. That's a really hard metric to get right, and previously you would need something on your shoe to get a really accurate measurement of that. Running power is now in the watch itself. You don't need an external sensor, which is pretty mind-blowing. Another new feature in the Polar Grid X is something called FuelWise. This is actually really exciting to me. Basically, FuelWise will analyze your workout to try to calculate how many calories you've burned, and then it will try to tell you how many calories you need to take in to compensate for that. This could be really handy at like ultramarathons or triathlons or really long events. You can either let it be smart and make suggestions by itself, or you can actually set this up to be manual intervals. Another cool new feature specific to trail running is something called Hill Splitter. Now, we saw something similar to this in Garmin when they introduced Climb Pro, which was pretty cool, and Hill Splitter is a pretty similar system. Basically, while you're running up and down steep hills, Hill Splitter will identify that rapid change of elevation and identify it as a climb or a descent. It'll bring up a special screen during your climbs and descents to give you all of the pertinent data of that climb or descent. This gives you a bunch of data like how many climbs you've done, accumulated distance, and also accumulated elevation gain. And the final feature I'm really excited about on the Polar Grid X is Commute Navigation. So Commute is a third-party app that's been around for a while now that allows you to design routes on a map on their website or in the phone app. And from there, you can navigate these routes using your phone, which is always really handy. However, with this integration with Polar, you can actually sync your Commute routes onto your Polar Grid X. And from there, you can actually follow the route with turn-by-turn navigation. It's important to note that this is not full-blown topographic mapping like we see on the Garmin Fenix 6, purely turn-by-turn navigation that's being synced to the watch. Still though, pretty cool. All right, so I've got the Polar Grid X on my left wrist, and the Garmin Fenix 6 in the Coros Apex Pro on my right wrist. The Garmin Fenix 6 is paired to a Polar H9 chest strap that I've got under my shirt here for really accurate heart rate readings. And the Coros Apex Pro is just relying on the onboard heart rate sensor itself. Oh man, it's just starting to rain. That sucks. 5K, let's do it. Here's something pretty cool. This is Strava Live segments. All right, all done. We've got 3.57 miles on the Garmin Fenix 6, 3.56 miles on the Coros Apex Pro, and 3.56 miles on the Polar Grit X. I'd say that's pretty good. They're all almost the exact same mileage. Let's go inside and dig a little deeper and see how closely they match up. Here we can see the Coros Apex Pro in orange, the Garmin Fenix 6 in blue, and the Polar Grit X in red. And as you can see, the Polar Grit X is doing a pretty good job in staying on the road, while the Coros Apex Pro and the Garmin Fenix 6 drift off a little bit. There's a couple of discrepancies in the Polar Grit X GPS track. It's not perfect, but it is pretty good. And you can see here on this corner that both the Coros Apex Pro and Garmin Fenix 6 drift inland a little bit, while the Polar Grit X stays right on the road. Here we have the heart rate track from all three devices. We have the Coros Apex Pro in red, the Garmin Fenix 6 in purple, and the Polar Grit X in blue. Something to keep in mind is that the Garmin Fenix 6 is paired with the Polar H9 heart rate strap, so it should be incredibly accurate compared to the other two. And here you can see that the Polar Grit X is keeping right in line with the Garmin Fenix 6. Here we have the elevation of all three devices. We have the Coros Apex Pro in dark green, the Garmin Fenix 6 in yellow, and the Polar Grit X in red. And they're all doing a pretty good job here. They're all within just a couple of meters of each other, which is within the margin of error for an altimeter. All right, so the Polar Grit X is actually shaping up to be a pretty solid option for a lot of trail or ultra runners out there. But how much does it cost? The Polar Grit X is going to retail for $429 at launch, and I think that's a pretty competitive price given what this thing's packing. Alright, so let's wrap this up. The Polar Grit X is a really exciting new device from a company that's been making GPS watches for a while now. They know what they're doing, and I feel like the Polar Grit X is going to tick a lot of boxes in that trail and ultra running community, not to mention all the other sports it can track. It looks great, it's very minimalistic, I like its style, and I am personally really excited to test all of these new features in the coming days and weeks to see its full potential. So that's basically all I've got for this first look of the Polar Grit X. Make sure you subscribe down below so you don't miss future videos with the Polar Grit X. I'm going to be doing a more detailed review in the coming weeks, and you definitely don't want to miss that. My hopes are high for this thing. If you have any particular questions about the Polar Grit X, make sure you comment down below. I'll definitely try to respond to as many as I can. I hope your friends and family are safe, you're washing those hands, and you're all staying apart, and I'll see you in the next one.